Brian Stann with us on the Anik Florian podcast. One thing that is missed in the lead up to Khabib and Conor is your analysis, so I want to get a little bit of it here. I think there are so many angles at which you can attack this thing, right? But among them, I mean, what are you most interested to see in what at least on paper looks to a lot of people like a classic striker versus grappler confrontation?
It does, and I would say that it goes a little beyond that in terms of, conditioning. The conditioning is going to be a big factor of this contest as well. And not just, everybody knows that in the first 2 rounds is when Conor's going to be the most dangerous to beat Khabib. And we saw Khabib very susceptible to straight left hands when he fought Michael Johnson. He ate a number of them. He doesn't move his head real well. How fast will Khabib want to close the distance and get in on Conor's legs? And if he chooses that route, how well will Conor maintain his energy? Because we know if anything tires Conor out, it's wrestling. And he comes in great condition, but just because of the way he's built as an athlete, he's not a guy who's going to be conditioned to where he can wrestle for 5 straight rounds. He's just not going to be able to. He's got to keep his distance. He's got to land big left hands. He's got to hurt Khabib early, but he's got to be smart about how he expends his energy. And he does have the power to knock Khabib out. We've seen Khabib get rocked. He's a human being. For Khabib, for me, he needs to move his head, and he doesn't need to go in there and try and prove that he can strike with Conor. He needs to use his bread and butter. He needs to be able to get him down. What I'm watching for, when I've seen Khabib grapple, in my eyes, he is the best at controlling someone on the ground with one hand and being able to punch almost continuously with the other hand. That is so hard to do. When you're grappling with good guys at this level, the championship level, you got to use 2 hands to control them. And Conor can grapple. People forget the kid can grapple, and he's good on the ground. He's a big, strong guy. Can Khabib control him with one arm and land sufficient shots with the other arm before a referee wants to stand him up? Because if I'm Conor and I want to manage my energy, if I do get taken down early, I want to tie Khabib up. I want to make it boring and force them to stand me back up rather than expend the energy myself to have to wall walk and work my way back up. I don't want to have to do that because it will reduce my punching power over time. Michael Bisping used to employ a great strategy where he would shoot takedowns on guys. Even if he didn't land them, he would force you to defend them, and he would steal your punching power. He did it to me. He did it to Vanderlei. He did it in a lot of his fights where he would make you wrestle, and he would use his pace as a weapon to slow you down in the later rounds and take away your punching power, because for him, he could punch the same power for all of those rounds. Khabib has got to be smart, close the distance, get this kid down and wear him out over the first 2 rounds, and then, look to be dominant in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. For Conor, I want to see, can he land the big left? Can he move and avoid the takedown early? And then can he manage his energy efficiently so he doesn't fade in the later rounds if he can't knock this kid out in the first 2?
Right. So if someone's giving you $1,000 to bet on one side of this, Khabib's the favorite right now, about -170. Conor McGregor holding at +140. Do you have a lean here 12 days out?
I do. I'm leaning versus Khabib, and forget all the things I said. This game is very much about mentality, and I have not been around either fighter for some time, so I have no idea where they are, but I'm going to make my best educated guess. When you've made north of $100 million, your level of hunger, the level you're willing to go to suffer to win a fight is different than a kid who's maybe got 50 grand in the bank from Dagestan. Khabib may have more money than that in the bank, but that's a different level, man. This kid comes from a place. It's different, but similar to the place that Conor came from too. Conor came from a hard upbringing. It wasn't easy, right? He was trying to be a plumber and couldn't make it as such. Came from a blue-collar family, and he was hungry. That's where Khabib is now. And he's going to be more primal. I think he's going to be willing to go to a certain depth of exhaustion and pain to win this fight. And Conor is tough as they come as well. I don't know if he's willing to go that far now, having lived so comfortably for the last year. Hunger is a big part of these big fights. And I give the advantage to Khabib there. And I think that he's able to out-wrestle Conor early, wear him down, and as Conor begins to fade a little bit, he doesn't fade much, but we saw it a little bit in the Nate Diaz fights, Khabib takes over there.
And it sounds like you don't at all worry about the big fight atmosphere for Khabib Nurmagomedov. If anything, it sounds like you think he might be buoyed by it, or I just think this is a different walk than he will have ever experienced prior.
And you make a phenomenal point. And the one thing, I said this to somebody this weekend, I said, look, on paper and as I analyze the fight, I think that Khabib wins this fight, but I can never count out Conor when the lights shine brightest. The kid just shows up. He just shows up, but I can't forget that first Nate Diaz fight.
Yeah.
I can't forget. He is a human being. The kid is human, and this is a guy in Khabib Nurmagomedov that, in my eyes, some of the things that hurt him against Nate Diaz, Khabib is a little better at.
Right. Very interesting stuff, Brian Stann. Great stuff. Continued success, my friend. Thanks for hopping on with us. Happy birthday.
Anytime,
Hope you
brother.
Can break
I
some
miss
bread
you.
With, I miss you too, man. And hey, if you ever want to call live sporting events, we'll leave the light on for you, right? Motel 6.
Leave it on.
Get back
Please
in the
do.
saddle.
Awesome. My pleasure.
All right. Thank you, buddy.
Thanks,
there
brother.
he is. Former UFC commentator, UFC veteran Brian Stann with us here on the Anik Florian podcast.
It's now time to take a stand with the All-American Brian Stann on the Anik Florian podcast.
And joining us on what is his 38th birthday, the greatest living American, Brian Stann. Happy birthday, my man. You don't strike me as a guy who loves birthdays, but we wish you a very happy 38th.
Yeah, I appreciate it, buddy. Yeah, I'll be, I don't remember the last time I celebrated one. But, I should actually start. Maybe for 2 years, celebrate them before I hit the big 4-0, and then I officially become old, I guess.
It's true, because I just turned 40, and I hate birthdays to begin with, right? And 40 was a tough one, man. Like, there was nothing easy about it. You really feel old, and I appreciate you not mincing your words there and telling me how old I am. You also don't strike me as a guy who would respond too well to a surprise party, like if all of a sudden there was a surprise party tonight. So hopefully nobody has one in the works for you.
Yeah, well, I could tell you, there's no way if he hasn't been in the works for me. I'm going home to my house. That won't be
part of the impetus. Part of the impetus for getting you on today was to talk about Khabib and Conor. It's also, of course, your birthday, but it has been just over a year since you called your last UFC fight. So I just want to start there. I'm sure at times you're too busy to miss it, but at other times, maybe when you're sitting around watching a fight, you sort of wish you were, still in the game.
Oh, absolutely. It's, there's been conversations here or there. Could I fit it in? Could I do this? Could I do that? It's really tough. My current role, I am extremely busy, but man, you can't help but miss a job like that. There's no doubt. I think everybody around me, everybody who heard me call fights knew it, that I absolutely loved it. At the end of the day, it was pulling me away from my family. I was traveling a little too much, and it didn't. The switch to a new job really didn't matter in that regard. But looking back on it now, you never want to close the door completely. I'm only 38. You never know what could happen, and maybe 4 or 5 years from now, I'd like to go back to doing some television. I definitely miss it. Love doing the job, and really, of course, miss working with you. You and I had, an awesome chemistry. We had a lot of fun exploring these different countries we went to. We made a lot of close friends with these fighters and coaches, and so it was a great environment, man. I had a good time. It was like family. When I left that role, it was like leaving a piece of family, man. That was tough.
Yeah, no, it is. And I know you called one by one a lot of members of the staff, and I know they appreciated that. And a show doesn't go by where someone isn't asking me about you. So there's no denying the impact that you made. How close are you to the sport in terms of following the day-to-day headlines? Like when this whole Jackson Wink MMA thing starts to bubble and Donald Cerrone and Diego Sanchez are getting into it and the Mike Winklejohn backdrop. I'd imagine a headline like that at least still crosses the COO's desk.
I would tell you that I tend to, on a lunch break or at night, I will look at the major websites every day. You can't help, that's still a big part of me, right? I'm forever going to be a martial artist. And I'm a huge Eagles fan, but I'm a huge mixed martial arts fan. And so when I have the time, and I'm trying to consume that and watch those fights. So it definitely hit me. I think that was a situation that was brewing for a long time. The minute the BMF Ranch opened up, and even before then, when Cowboy and Leonard Garcia started making money on opening up their home to other fighters, it was a great business idea. Cowboy bought a bus, and he would bus in all these fighters who paid a certain amount of money to stay at his place every month, and he would give Greg Jackson a piece of it. It was a great value proposition for him. He made a ton of money doing it, and that really led to what was the creation of the BMF Ranch, and there was going to be some divide there, and I see both sides of it. One thing I would tell you is that coaching fighters is really tough to be profitable, because when they lose, it's always somebody else's fault. So they leave the gym. They don't pay very well, or they don't pay on time. You got to hassle them to pay the money that they owe you for the percentage of their purse. So it was really tricky. And I would say that Greg Jackson is a sweet person. He's a very good coach. He's a great guy. And one of the things he's not good at is telling fighters, like, hey, you owe me money. It was never important to him. So, when it came to actually running a profitable gym, that wasn't his strength. His strength was coaching fighters. So Wink watched that and said, look, we're going to move it to my building. I've got bills to pay. So I kind of understand both sides. It just crushes me that they can't sit down and come to an agreement, because regardless, whether Cowboys, help that gym be profitable or not on a balance sheet or an income statement, he damn sure has helped build some of the fighters that have been there that have, right? Whether he's training with them, he's teaching them, certainly helped me while I was training. So it's hard to see a guy who I consider like a brother, and then my coach, Greg and Wink was really, my main guy. I hate seeing that divorce there, because I want to take both sides. I wish I could get them on a table and get them to come to an agreement, because they have both contributed so much to that team. And it does sting to see, Cowboy not chosen over another athlete to coach, when he's getting ready to fight. That's wild.
Right. And I'd imagine you would not be one of those lining up to see Cowboy Cerrone and Diego Sanchez settle this inside the octagon, right, at this stage of their respective careers.
No If I were still training there, this conversation would have happened around a round table like this before it ever hit the media, and we would have tried to solve it that way. It's the same way that a Joey Villaseñor or Keith Jardine, when they were leading that gym, would have done it. But it's tough. It's a tough situation.